My name is Jerm. This is Jerm Warfare, the battle of ideas. Debbie Lerman, thank you for joining me in the trenches.
Thank you for having me.
I always get uncomfortable with those intros because we were talking now just before I hit record, and it always feels so artificial and forced.
Contrived.
Yes.
It's contrived, but that's okay.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously when someone's listening to it, they don't know that we were chatting before I hit the record button.
Exactly.
But I love our story, by the way. I just want to repeat it again because it's for me, it's so special. When I contacted you, when was it? Like 2022, I think, for the first time we chatted thereabouts. And you didn't want to come onto my show. At that stage, I was on TNT, and I don't think if I remember correctly, you didn't want to come on and all that. And then
well, it was in 2022. I had just started actually seriously researching COVID, and I found crazy things that in my experience of the world just blew up everything that I had ever known or thought about, right? Because I was the opposite of a conspiracy theorist, and I was also like a lefty, blah, blah, blah. And I was still in that mindset where every time somebody asked me to go on a show or to have an interview, I would like look at their background and I would see, are they conspiracy theorists? Or am I gonna, is it reliable? Am I gonna be putting my reputation at risk by going on this show, And so at the time I was didn't understand anything, still, because I was just starting down all the rabbit holes. So you're right. I mean, the path I wish we should someday bring up those emails. I'm sure I have them.
I've definitely still kept them.
Yeah. Where I say, well, I don't want to discuss this and I don't want to discuss that.
Yes. I don't want to venture down this road. Let's just stick to this particular talking point.
Yes, and now I'm at a point where I'm like, anything you want to discuss is fine with me.
I had a guest on about a year ago now, I think. Jessica Hockett was a great episode, and I've quoted her so many times because she basically epitomizes what you just said. She said, I started out researching the hospital data in New York, and I ended up questioning whether or not we landed on the moon.
Hey, I'm right there with her. I mean, I know Jessica not personally, but I know her work. And I'm right there with the moon. I'm right there. I now ask people after I tell them about my COVID work and all of that, I say, and by the way, what do you think about the moon landing? And they say, no, don't go there.
But in all seriousness, Debbie, the reason why I found you in what's it like 4 years ago now almost. Sure, can you believe it, eh? 4 years ago.
No, I can't.
You were one of the first, if not actually the first, if I remember correctly, who at that stage was talking about the military aspect, the Department of Defense involvement in the COVID era. And I think soon after that, I came across the work of Sasha Latipova, and I know that you know her. And so few people actually comment on that. They still seem to, it's a blind spot. They seem to not notice the obvious military operation that the whole thing was.
Yeah. Yes, that's absolutely correct. I think I was the first person to, I certainly was the first person to report on the fact that the United States response to COVID was actually led by the National Security Council and the Department of Defense, and not the public health agencies. And then Sasha also picked it up. Sasha was looking at the contracts for the vaccines, and she noticed that everything about the vaccine operation was a military operation. And then we also looked into the laws that governed the whole thing, and they were all laws that are supposed to only apply to, weapons of mass destruction threats. And so, it's very strange that people don't want to go there. I don't understand it.
I also don't.
NATO was involved.
I lost friends as a result of interviewing you and Sasha.
That's crazy. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, then, well, they weren't really friends in that case.
I mean, what is it about what we're saying? Why would you lose friends? Like they thought that we were lying, or they thought that we were.
No.
What is it that they didn't like about it?
No. Their thinking is that you are deflecting from Fauci and Bill Gates and the real baddies.
Oh, I see.
And I know you've written on Fauci, and it's obvious that Fauci is a bad guy, but he wasn't really all that important.
He's a bad guy, and Gates is a horrible guy. They're evil people, but I think that's interesting because that's kind of the opposite of reality, which is Gates is definitely like a major player in the global public-private partnership cabal, along with the military and intelligence. I mean, he's very closely affiliated with them, and so is Fauci. But going after Fauci is a complete distraction, because we have lists of people. Sasha and we wrote this whole thing. I think I talked to you about it, the COVID dossier, where we actually listed all the agencies and all the people who were involved in, not all the people, a few of the top people who were involved in every country that we could possibly find, which are many countries all around the world. Definitely all the Five Eyes countries and the European and NATO countries. NATO was heavily involved. So yeah, you can talk about Fauci, but you're completely missing the entire point of it. And the point of it is that the global techno-fascist control grid all of a sudden revealed itself during COVID. And the global techno-fascist control grid, yes, it incorporates Fauci and Bill Gates, but it is so much bigger and so much scarier than that. And right now, and then when Trump was elected, it just continued apace, and everybody just all of a sudden decided, nope, that's it, because it was Fauci. And if it was Fauci and now we don't have Fauci, or it was Biden and it was the Biden administration, anytime anybody says something was the Biden administration, you know that that's not true, because there's no such thing as the Biden administration. First of all, there's no such thing as Biden, really, as president. But also,
you just dropped that in.
There's also no such thing as the Biden administration. It's the global techno-fascist cabal was running the first Trump administration, the so-called Biden administration, the second Trump administration. There's no difference at all. In fact, it's been massively accelerated under the second Trump administration, because all these people who said that they understood what was going on during COVID absolutely didn't understand anything, and they thought it was Fauci. And so that's why it's so important not to talk just about Fauci.
Sorry, I just want to quickly go back to your Biden comment. Do you think he actually exists?
Oh, yes, I do. When I say there was no such thing, sorry, I didn't mean he didn't exist. I meant he didn't exist as a competent acting president.
Right. No, because you know the whole theory about the what do you call it? Like all the doubles. Like sometimes
I do. I don't. I've looked into it. I disagree with that.
Okay. I thought you were alluding to that. That's why I laughed.
No. I was more alluding to the fact that when people say the Biden administration, what they mean is just whoever was running the government when Biden was president, but it wasn't that he was competent or able to do any of the jobs that the president is supposed to do.
The other issue with talking about the military, why many people don't want you to talk about it, is because it actually implicates people like Trump.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I wrote an article not so long ago called Cheering the Militarization of Everything. Interestingly, it was about a month before the Iran war broke out. So, and everybody was yelling and screaming, how can you say these, Trump, and he's our savior, and Musk is our savior, and these people are saviors, which to me is it's hard for me to understand how people could have gone through COVID, understood or said they understood what was happening, and then just completely turned their brains off and just gone right into the propaganda again. So they're right into the propaganda vortex with Trump and stuff like that. So when Trump, on the first day that he was in office, declared more states of emergency than any president ever in the history of the United States, one of them being a state of emergency for energy, which they need for their AI data centers. And he said that he did it so in order to bypass regulations and bypass the Constitution and bypass everybody's legal rights. He said it at Davos. And so Okay, that's exactly what they did during COVID. They just declared states of emergency so that they could bypass the Constitution and every country's legal protections and civil protections. And when we talk about the military, when I talk about military and intelligence involvement in COVID, I'm not saying they're the ones who were in charge. I'm saying they're the ones who ran it through their agencies. But the global public-private partnership that ran COVID is mostly consistent of the pharmaceutical companies and all of their subsidiaries and contractors. Thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people all over the world are part of that. Not all knowingly, of course, but all of their interests are incorporated into the interests of the cabal. And then the military-industrial complex, which is enormous. It's enormous. It's not the CIA. It's the entire NATO alliance. That is an enormous military intelligence alliance that encompasses, again, thousands and thousands of people and agencies and public-private partnerships. So it's huge. So when we say the military and the intelligence agencies ran COVID, what we're saying is it wasn't a public health event. That's what we're saying. We're not saying, oh, the CIA sat down with MI6 and the Mossad and they said, oh, we're going to do COVID. No, not at all. We're saying all of the entire pharmaceutical military industrial complex, which is biowarfare, biodefense, that's where all the money is, and that's where all of the vaccine activity actually happens. It happens in the biodefense space, not in the public health space. And so what we were trying and are still trying to get people to understand is if it wasn't a public health event, then we don't have to talk about masks and public distancing and botched, the CDC. We don't have to reform the CDC. We could reform the CDC. We could cancel the CDC. We could cancel, NIA. We can cancel all kinds of agencies. That has nothing to do with what happened during COVID. It's a giant, giant global consortium of interests that came together, and they all had a reason why they wanted to have a pandemic, or what they called a pandemic. They wanted people to believe that there was a public health emergency so that they could actually go in and do all kinds of surveillance, propaganda, censorship, control, and then also make tons of money while they were doing it. So all of those things.
But Debbie,
all of those things.
Debbie, there was obviously a pandemic. There were billboards that said so.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there were announcements. And there were announcements in the airports.
It must be true. So my whole point about that, and why I wrote that article about bioweapons are the new boogeyman, that's my recent article, is that it doesn't matter if there was a virus, if it was a natural virus, if it was a bioweapon, if it leaked, if it was intentionally leaked. None of that matters because the virus didn't kill the world. In fact, it killed very few people. If you believe that it killed it. If you believe that it killed anyone, okay, I leave that open. I leave that question open because I don't have enough information. The information that I have, that I am absolutely certain about, is that whatever it was didn't kill a lot of people. What killed a lot of people was the lockdown until vaccine response. That's what killed a lot of people. So instead of looking into the origin of the virus, instead of looking into gain-of-function research, we're going to ban gain-of-function research. That's going to solve all our problems. If we ban gain-of-function research, first of all, gain-of-function research is a military intelligence thing. So you can, people like to talk about Fauci funded it. No, Fauci didn't fund it. The CIA funded it. The military funded it. So yeah, you can go in and try to cut those budgets, but good luck with that. Also, that has nothing to do with it because whatever it was or wasn't, they were all set with the lockdown until vaccine response, and they were going to do that response no matter what it was. And that response had already been set up. It was all ready to go. They had gamed it many times. You needed a huge propaganda and censorship operation had to have been set up beforehand in order for that thing to work, right? In order to convince everybody that it was a deadly pandemic, despite their eyes, perhaps telling them otherwise, or their experience in order to convince them that the vaccines were safe and effective. I mean, they had to have that all set up ahead of time. It was global. It was huge, right? And so we need to look at that global network that did the lockdown until vaccine response. You can talk about the bioweapons, you can talk about the biolabs, blah, blah, blah.
It's a distraction.
Until the cows. And what?
It's a distraction.
It's a distraction. And right now they're using it as a distraction again. So interestingly, ever since Trump took office and RFK was supposed to be our savior and whatever, and all the people who knew that the lockdown until vaccine response was bad and that the military intelligence were involved and the global cabal and all of that, I don't know if they understood everything, but they wanted, and first and foremost, let's stop the injuries and deaths from mRNA products. Okay, first and foremost, that's an acute emergency. It's an acute emergency situation that started in 2021. And it hasn't ended because they're still researching them, administering them, and kind of like trying to talk people into getting them. So the first thing that people wanted was for that to end. But what happened was everybody got turned around into this Trump MAGA Maha, propaganda machine. And so instead of talking about COVID, now we have to talk about, the pandemic of the chronic disease, blah, 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 that's been going on for many, many years. And they used that chronic disease paradigm to say, and it was very obvious that they were doing this right up to the election and through the election and after the election, to say, oh, the incidence of heart disease, cancer, autoimmune disease, all the things that the mRNA shots cause, right? All of the things, heart disease, cancer, autoimmune disease, all those things, birth, fertility, right? That's been happening for decades. So, okay, and so what we need to do is we need to look at all the factors. We need to look at the glyphosates, and we need to look at the red food dye, and we need to look at, at the microplastics, and we need to look at, okay, those are all interesting topics that have been going on for decades. It's true, but those things have also been an issue for decades. They don't look at the insane spike. But, so let's say we start in 1970 and we see like a curve going up, of all of these conditions. If you look at 2021, all of a sudden you see everything jump, a huge giant spike in all of those conditions, plus deaths, of course, between 2021 and now. No, they don't want to look at that because they don't want to look at what happened in 2021. They want to look at what's been happening for the past 50 years. Now it's getting a little bit old. People are getting a little tired of that. And they're getting tired of RFK Jr. not doing anything that we wanted him to do about COVID. And so now they have to, and now the midterm elections are coming up, and for some reason people are interested in that. And they care about whether Trump is going to lose and or the Republicans. And so they need to get Maha people, especially disaffected Maha people who are very disappointed. They need to get them back on the train. And what they're doing now is they're saying, oh my God, actually, it's not just natural causes or environmental causes for all of these weird diseases and all of this chronic disease epidemic that's been going on for 50 years. No, it's bioweapons. It's ticks. It's Lyme disease from bioengineered ticks. It's alpha-gal from ticks. It's, AI engineered mosquitoes. It's Hanta and Ebola and all of these things that are actually bioweapons. So now we have to be really scared about bioweapons. And this is a very clever thing that they're doing, because people who think they know what happened, they think that COVID was a bioweapon, and that's really important, and that's what we should be looking at. Oh yeah, COVID was a bioweapon and all these other things are bioweapons. And so actually that feeds right into all the interests of the cabal, of the global public-private partnership between the pharmaceutical companies and the military and the intelligence, because that's what they do. They study bioweapons and then they pretend or say that they have safe and effective countermeasures. And so actually what's happening is they're playing into the idea that we need to bypass all the laws and regulations that govern the manufacturing and the distribution and all of that of pharmaceutical products, because everything is a bioweapon. If everything is a bioweapon, emergency use authorization and the PrEP Act and all those legal abominations that they used during COVID. And by the way, Robert Malone called the PrEP Act an abomination on his Substack. So now we can all agree it is an abomination. And using it for the hantavirus is also an abomination, even if you think the hantavirus is a bioweapon. But that's what they're doing. So now they're using bioweapons to justify the exact same thing that they were doing before. And people are buying into it again because they find whatever it is that you're afraid of, and that's what they use to get you on board with their plan.
What exactly is a bioweapon?
Right. So that's a good question. So the definition of bioweapon, which is defined by, the UN and, all of the global organizations that had treaties, right, against them, right, because we weren't supposed to use them. The definition is, it is a biological organism or a product produced by a biological organism that is used to harm or kill people. That's it. It's not the vaccines. The vaccines are not a bioweapon. I hate it when people use that word for the vaccines. That you can call them a chemical weapon, you can call them a biochemical weapon because they're made in a lab. You can call them, an AI-generated chemical bioweapon if you want. Not biochemical weapon. But a bioweapon by definition is a biological entity. So it has to be a pathogen or a poison
which is not a vaccine.
Which is not a vaccine. So it's just a misnomer that I don't like because it confuses people. Because then when I talk about how, the bioweapons are being used to scare people, then they say, wait a minute, but the vaccines are bioweapons and you're against the vaccines. And I say, yeah, the vaccines are terrible. They're not a bioweapon. If they think it's a weapon that was intentionally used to kill people, that's fine. I don't even say that. I just say that they are a harmful, unregulated military countermeasure, because that's by definition and legal definition what they are. It's an unregulated military countermeasure. It's not a pharmaceutical product. It's not a vaccine. There's nothing it's not safe and it's not effective. So calling it a bioweapon, I think, confuses people, because bioweapons are things that they believe they can take biological organisms, like what they call viruses and bacteria and things like that, and funguses and all kinds of poisons and materials that you can get in nature, and they can manipulate them, they can genetically alter them, they can make them more virulent, which means that they're more dangerous, they can kill you, or they can make them more transmissible. And then they have a myth that they can make them more virulent and more transmissible, which is absolutely, completely not possible, even if there were such a thing as, lab manipulated organisms. And we can argue about whether there is such a thing as a lab manipulated organism. It doesn't really matter, because all the money and all of the effort is put into that. So there are hundreds of the top academic institutions in the world, and all of them are funded by the biodefense industrial complex. So they're going to study how to manipulate viruses and bacteria, whether or not that's possible, whether or not that's even a viable thing, because that's what they're getting the money for. And the reason we know this historically, I was just reading about cancer-causing viruses. So when they first started with virology, I'm doing a lot of research on polio now, and they started to hype up this idea of cancer-causing viruses, and they decided that there was such a thing. So they made the decision and the assumption that there were viruses that caused cancer. And then they chose like 80 institutions or more around the country, and when I say they, I mean private institutions like the Rockefeller Foundation and government agencies who are public-private partnerships working together, and drug companies, and they decided that's it. That's how we're going to solve cancer. And so all of the institutions started studying how to make vaccines against cancer-causing viruses, even though all the scientists were like, what are we doing? Like, we don't even know what we're talking about. We don't know what these viruses are. We don't think we can make vaccines against them. We have no idea what's going on. This is bad science, but we're doing it because that's what they're paying us to do. And so that's the same thing with the bioweapons of today. And most of that industry also has to do with vaccines. So vaccines are at the bottom of everything. And it's...
Yeah, and what it deflects from is the real enemy, which is fear.
Yeah. That's right, because we're not afraid of COVID anymore. We're not afraid of these, I guess some people are afraid of the microplastics and, electromagnetic radiation and chemtrails and all of that stuff. But those things aren't going to make people agree to do things like lockdown or take treatments that are against their best interests, or allow suspension of the Constitution or suspension of legal rights and protections. So there's constantly a search for something that's going to make people so scared that they do agree to suspend their rights. That's how they do it. So bioweapons are now the new fear-generating thing, and it's working in the sense that all I see everywhere on alternative media are all kinds of things like alpha-gal, bioengineered ticks, and interestingly, people say things, and I just can't believe they're saying it with a straight face. So they say things like, the incidence of alpha-gal, which is an allergy that makes you unable to eat red meat, and can supposedly kill you instantly if you have it bad. They say the incidence of this has risen by 1,000 million % between 2021 and 2025. Anything that has risen by 1,000,000 % between 2021 and 2025 is almost certainly caused by the one thing that was introduced in 2021 to billions of people between then and now. It's probably caused by that. So if you're saying the incidence of alpha-gal increased by 1,000,000 % between those years, first look at the probable cause, the proximal probable cause of it, and then start talking to me about engineered ticks. But they're using the engineered ticks to deflect again to deflect, just like they used the chronic disease epidemic, just like they used all those other environmental toxins to deflect. Now they're using bioweapons to deflect. It's interesting. It's very clever what they're doing.
Yes, now that you mention it, you're bang on, because fear, that is the threat. UFO disclosure, for example, and you have no idea how to respond to that. So it's about fear, and you will willingly give up all of your sovereignty to the state, who will hopefully protect you from an alien invasion.
That's another one that they love. So they're really bringing that out. They're actually pulling out all their cannons right now. It's interesting. I mean, I think I sense a little desperation behind it. But yeah, the whole UFO thing, which I find completely and utterly absurd. That is another fear porn thing that they like to take out when they need to get people in the conspiracy world on board. So they need to get us on board with, they're hiding something from us, and this is real, and what are we going to do about it? And it's the same as the bioweapons. It's the same thing. Anything that is reported that makes one fearful without putting it in context. So people say, like, well, you're making people afraid of the PrEP Act because I say the PrEP Act is an abomination, right? It's a law that is unconstitutional. It violates everybody's rights, and So when I talk about violating people's rights, I'm giving people information that they can use, and I'm giving them knowledge that is actually that they can use to protect themselves. When I say, oh my God, there's these ticks and they're going to give you this syndrome and you're going to die if you eat red meat, I'm not giving you any information that you can use at all. I'm telling you to be really scared anytime you go outside, and anytime you see a tick, and anytime you eat red meat. And I'm not giving you any kind of information that you can use to protect yourself. I'm actually making you afraid and making you want somebody to come and protect you. If you're getting information that makes you want somebody else to come and protect you from it, that's probably propaganda.
What do you fear?
I fear the technocratic, techno-fascist global cabal. I do fear them. I fear the system, in the sense that I don't think enough people understand the system, and I think if we did, everybody, it's not hard to resist it, because all of us just have to not cooperate. But I fear most of all the propaganda, because when I realized during COVID how incredibly powerful it is, and how it can actually turn people into cult members, which means that you can't really get them out. You can't get them out. Like I'm living in a parallel universe right now with many of my friends and relatives. It's just a parallel universe, and there's I'm looking desperately for ways to bridge. And we're back to being able to talk about things, but not about the things that matter. And so I'm afraid of the propaganda, because I don't know how to counter it in people who are sucked into it. And I also have to constantly monitor myself. I mean, we're all vulnerable to it. And the way that I kind of lessen my fear, the way that I confront my fear, is that I know that the plans that they have in mind are probably not doable. So, controlling the whole world, surveilling the whole world, propagandizing the whole world using AI or whatever, that you can't do that. They're going to try, and it's going to be, bad things are going to happen. But it's kind of like every other attempt that has been made in history by very powerful people who think that they can control the world. And so that's how I confront the fear, by thinking historically, thinking sort of on a larger scale, and knowing that that's not possible. But my fear is mostly of how the propaganda controls the people who are supposed to be on my side. And so during COVID, I experienced friends and family who, I don't know, if push came to shove, if they would be okay with me being in a quarantine camp, or if me being forced vaccinated or something, So people who are supposed to be on my side, the propaganda can really, really turn that around. And then the people who were supposed to be on my side, after COVID, and who are now completely propagandized again into the whole Trump Maha thing, that scared me even more, actually, because that showed me that people who thought that they were smart and knew what was going on could actually get propagandized again. And they got propagandized to the point of excommunicating people like me. So I am black-pilled, I am, doomsdayer, whatever, and they asked me, like, well, what's the solution? What's the solution? You're just telling us there's problems, and we can't live like that. We need to believe that there's somebody that we can vote for, or that there's some way that we can reform the system or work within the system. And what I tell them is that is, and that I'm a nihilist, right? Because I say, no, you can't do that. There's no hope in the system at all. And they say, well, you're a nihilist. And I actually think it's nihilistic to be in a system that to be completely corrupt. Everybody knows it. Even those people who are calling me a nihilist, they know that it's a uniparty, and they have to vote for the lesser of two evils or something. That's nihilistic. That's accepting that there's nothing you can do and just going along with it. I think the opposite of nihilism is saying, wait a minute, stop complying, stop even giving your energy, your money, your time, your attention to the system, and let's all get out of it. If we were all out of it right now, like all the COVID people and all the people who understood what was going on, they wouldn't be able to do any of the things that they're doing right now with the AI, with the wars, with Trump, because there would be so many more people who are outside of the system opposing it. But because they're all nihilistic and they just say like, oh, well, we just have to keep working in the system and we have to keep finding, third party candidates or whatever, I feel like that's the less hopeful path. So we know what we know what the right path is, I think, but I think that the system is just really good at keeping people inside of it.
Yes, of course. It's the attention economy. If you keep people on their cell phones scrolling through reels or whatever, then I spoke about this on another episode. You keep people away from boredom, and you keep them distracted. What you do want is boredom, because it allows people the space to think critically. If you're constantly bombarding them with stuff the whole time that's irrelevant, they will never question what actually happened in 2020.
Right. And so, yeah, I'm not on social media for that reason. I don't do social media. The only thing I do is write on Substack, and even the notes on Substack, which they've really gotten really bad, can suck me in. I can see how people scroll through things and how social media works, even though that's the only one that I do. It's really bad. And so I always tell people, just first of all, get off of social media. Find the information sources that you trust, and you have to cobble it together. People say, well, what should I, you don't like the New York Times, you don't like Fox News, you don't like, either, the right or left media. What do you suggest? And I say, there's nothing. You have to go find like individual people and individual sources that you trust on different topics. And it's hard. It's not easy. It's like you have to do research. It's like you have to actually, like you said, you have to actually think about it, and you have to actually find the ones that you think are reliable, and don't spend too much time on it. Just don't spend too much time on it. I
wouldn't call it social media. I would call it anti-social media, because you're just stuck looking at your device.
That's good. It is antisocial. That's absolutely true. And the way that they spread fear is through social media. That's how they do it. And so everything that they were able to do during COVID was thanks to social media. Anti-social media.
Do you find that when you talk about this stuff, though, people are now tired? They go, it's gone now, it's behind us. They don't want to think about it anymore. And in actual fact, what's quite scary is how many people I engage with who have almost forgotten the whole thing.
Who have what?
They've just forgotten. It's like, it's a distant memory now. Let's move on. Yeah. But you can't move on because it's a placeholder. It's an incredibly important event that's accelerating other events.
Yes. Exactly. And so that's the scary thing about the propaganda, is that people who, they list the things that the deep state, and the deep state is the global public-private partnership between the corporations and the military-industrial complex and Silicon Valley. I just want to make that clear. It's not like a bunch of spies sitting in a room. So the deep state, the global cabal, they'll list things like, they'll say, okay, the Iraq War, the War on Terror, Russiagate, Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, and wait a minute, did you skip something in there? Did you skip like the biggest, hugest, most obvious and most global thing? They don't list COVID as one of those deep state controlled events. All of them. And I'm talking about people that I respect to certain different degrees, like Glenn Greenwald, like Matt Taibbi, like people who really investigated the deep state when it came to Trump and Russiagate and the Ukraine war and stuff like that, and other people who look into it when it comes to Israel-Palestine or the Iran war, they all skip over COVID as one of the things that, like you said, that is reveals the trends and the forces that are actually active in the world right now. And that is, to me, I never hear anybody on the sort of, I guess, mainstream media adjacent kind of alternatives talk about it. The people who analyze geopolitics don't talk about it. The people who analyze, what's happening in terms of power shifts in the world and unipolar. Well, I mean, the people in our space do, but our space is tiny.
And very, very divided also. A lot of infighting.
And a lot of infighting, which I think intentional.
Yes.
Because
by design.
It's by design. So you and I were talking before we hit record about the virus, no virus issue. And what I always say is, first of all, that became an issue during COVID when they were trying to divide us. And some people went very crazy and berserk, accusing other people of things and, sowing a lot of discord for no reason at all, because it wasn't the virus that, as I said, it wasn't the so-called virus or the real virus or the fake virus or the bioengineered virus. It wasn't that entity, whether it existed or not, that killed the world. So it doesn't matter. We can talk about whether viruses exist. That's a huge, long conversation, and I'm delving into it now, and I'm not even going to say what I think because I don't have enough information yet. I do know so far that when I look at studies that have to do with viruses and that have to do with the historical record of how they came to decide that there were viruses and that viruses did certain things and that they could create vaccines against viruses, I haven't found any papers that were very reliable. So right now I don't have a lot of scientific evidence pointing to the very scientific validity of the entire field of virology. That doesn't mean that I know that viruses don't exist. I don't know that, so I can't say that. And so people will attack me and say, well, instead of telling people that, COVID wasn't a public health event or whatever, you just have to tell them that viruses don't exist. But if you start with that statement, if I go to someone and I say, you know what, the problem is with, or even if you're just talking about vaccines, let's say you want to convince someone that they shouldn't get their kid vaccinated, right? If I want to convince someone who has been propagandized all their lives about vaccines that they shouldn't get their kid vaccinated, I'm not going to tell them that viruses don't exist because they're just going to shut down and they're not going to listen to me. I'm going to tell them what the scientific record shows about how the incidence of disease plummeted way before vaccines, about how all the scientifically proven things that are enough. That's enough to convince someone not to give their child a vaccine. But people get all riled up about, you have to say that there's no viruses, otherwise you're playing into the framework and blah, blah, blah. And I just don't think that that's a helpful way to approach the subject. I'm not saying it's not valid. It's certainly a valid subject to study, and it's a valid subject to argue about and debate about and talk about and show evidence for or against or whatever. It's not helpful in the context of trying to understand COVID or trying to understand, why you shouldn't get your kid vaccinated.
Strategically, it's not very helpful in conversations, and it's not at all persuasive. So you have to come in at a better angle. You actually need to meet people where they are at.
Yeah. And that's hard, especially for somebody like me. I mean, if I immediately come in, which I sometimes do, I often do, and it's not good, and I say, well, COVID wasn't a public health event, it was run by the military intelligence, and they're like,
Yeah.
They don't want, so you have to start.
Don't foil that.
Right? And I'm learning that people have been giving me very good advice about how to approach things, like by asking questions, not making statements, asking people like how they feel about something or whether they noticed anything that they felt was unusual, or whether they think a certain fact that they were told might be, I might be able to challenge it in some way. So it's very difficult. to do.
I actually
think.
had that experience recently. I was added to a WhatsApp group called Balls. It was just for guys to discuss the matters of the world of great importance with no holds barred. And someone mentioned that they knew someone who died of COVID-19. I said, but there was no COVID-19, and I was removed from the group.
You were?
Yes.
You were removed from the group. See, so they're going to. So you made an extreme statement that probably wasn't a good idea, but they weren't tolerant enough or open enough to say, okay, that's an interesting perspective, which is what they should have said, right?
Because sometimes you kind of gauge, right? You gauge the people that you are around, and you know that this is just not worth it. you know what I'm talking about. There are some battles you choose, and others you just go, I'm not going to even bother with this one.
I mean, were they just a bunch of normies? Like,
Yeah.
what was? Yeah.
I just realized that there was no hope here, so I'll just come in. I'll just shoot straight from the hip. And.
Yeah. How to get yourself kicked out. That's a good way.
But the sad thing though is those people are still in the majority.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
the ones who talk about bioweapons are not those people. The ones who talk about bioweapons are people in the alternative space.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So the problem is those people are in the majority, and then the people in our space are so propagandized also that they also are unreachable, because if I say right now, people are going to look at me and they're going to say the fact that I'm saying that the weaponized tick story and the alpha-gal story and the bioweapons lab story and we have to cut funding to gain of research story, all of those stories I'm saying are peripheral and meant to cover up the real things that are going on. I'm going to get accused of all kinds of things probably because people on our side are propagandized as well. That's why I mean we're in a tiny minority, like people who just want to find the truth and don't want to be canceling each other, or if people want to argue with me or show me that there is such a thing as a tick that causes alpha-gal, please do. But please explain to me why between 2021 and 2025, which is when the mRNA shots were unleashed on billions of people, why is that not a more likely explanation? That's my question.
I wonder if Matthias Desmet was right. He said that around 30% of people at any time will be non-hypnotized or not hypnotized. So if you think about your circles that you hang around, what that effectively means is that 3 in 10 people on average are going to be in tune with what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's a good, and not in my experience.
Are there more?
In my experience, way fewer.
Oh, fewer. Okay. Wow. Okay, so 30% is quite optimistic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure, that is very sad, Debbie. That is very sad.
Yeah. What can you do? I mean, that's what keeps me, when you ask what am I afraid of, that's what I'm afraid of. That's what I'm afraid of, is being surrounded. And my daughter calls it cult brain, and she says, Mom, everybody has cult brain about different things. You have cult brain, everybody has cult brain. So cult brain is what scares me.
Yeah. Okay, I get that. Do you also do this? If I go to the shops, I often just, with my peripheral vision, think about how many people around me think the way I do. Mm-hmm. Do you also do that?
That's interesting. I don't do it as specifically, but that sounds like the reason I don't do that specifically is because, like, the places that I go to shop, for instance, I live in an extremely performative liberal kind of neighborhood, and so I know that nobody around me, you know what I mean? And if I go to another, I kind of know the lay of the land, so I kind of know. But yeah, I don't.
Okay, well, hold on. No, let me be more. Okay, so let me give you a more specific example, depending on what I've been talking about recently. So I might go into the mall and all these people are walking past me, and I'll think, I wonder how many of them think man walked on the moon. Like, that's a pretty specific example. And I always come to the same conclusion that the majority of those around me accept the official story. It doesn't matter what it is. Any official story is what the majority of those around me think. And I'm not suggesting that I'm superior. I'm not saying that at all, because I could be wrong and they could be right. I don't necessarily think that about a lot of these topics, but it could also be the possibility. But it's more about how many people are in tune, or how many people am I in tune with. Does that make sense?
Yes. Right. Yes. Yes. Yeah. I think that's also a hard thing to do, because I have found that I'm in tune with some people about COVID, but I'm not in tune with them about Trump and the technocrats. I'm in tune with some people about the technocrats but not about Israel. I'm in tune with some people about Israel, but not about pandemics. Like there's very, 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 very few people who I'm in tune with about all the topics. And then forget the moon landing, like even the people that I'm in tune with, let's say about 99% of those things, yeah, the moon landing is out there. And I also, until recently, didn't want to go there, but when I did, I realized
it's just a topic. But Debbie, it's just a subject. I mean, for me, nothing is taboo. I'm happy to ask the question and to think about it. I've even entertained the idea of Earth being flat. I don't personally think Earth is flat, but I've entertained it, and I love talking to flat earthers because they ask questions that other people perhaps are too afraid to ask, and I enjoy that. I like that. They are those people who would be cast out of society. If society was run like that, and those are the people that I like. I don't know who said this. It's often attributed to Einstein, but I don't think that's correct from what I read. But it was something along the lines of, I'm not interested in the 9 out of 10 who agree with one another. I'm interested in the one who disagrees with the other 9.
Yeah, that's good. I agree. And I agree with you. I think the problem with those kinds of things, and like, let's say the moon landing, is that you really have to spend the time to get the information. And so it's not enough for me to come to someone and say, hey, I've looked into it and I think it's all fake, I have to send them like many, many hours of videos, and you have to send them articles, and like, who has time for that? So the problem of just doing your own research is an extremely time consuming. I of course think it's the most important thing in order to get away from the propaganda. But people who don't understand that everything that they've ever been told is propaganda, don't want to spend the time, including myself, on many topics. And so that's why you're right. Like, I will have a conversation about anything. I'll have a conversation about flat Earth, about no virus, about the moon landing, and I won't judge people.
Yeah, and I just want to add, because I've noticed this over the years of having these conversations. I don't know a single flat earther who got jabbed, not one. So I'm just pointing that out.
Interesting. So whatever you think about it, at least somebody who has that sensibility to know that, or to think that everything is a lie, well, they're not going to fall for the lies, whether the lies are, real or not. They're not going to fall for it. So yeah.
And just by the way, on the jab thing, I think you probably know this, but my country, South Africa, had one of the lowest uptakes in the world. And why I point that out is because I love when they say, IQs in Africa are notoriously low. Well, we might have the lowest IQs in the world, but we got the lowest jab uptake. So I don't know about that correlation.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Also, probably the lowest deaths from COVID itself, right? Because,
well, most Africans don't have TV.
Right, exactly. Kind of like the Amish. So it's like, if you are young and healthy, as most Africans are in the younger age bracket, and so you didn't get hurt by COVID or whatever, or any virus or any disease during 2020. Then you didn't take the vaccine in 2021. Then you're probably way healthier than most of the people in the world.
Actually, if I think back now, Debbie, to when the lockdowns were announced, the speaking of the military, I mean, within minutes after the president announced lockdowns, there were military vehicles going out, right? So obviously, it was initiated in advance, right?
Right.
But here's something interesting. I knew many people who lived in very, very poor areas. We call them townships, but I think the international term might be like a squatter camp or something. I don't know or a shanty town, perhaps.
Oh, I think we know townships. I've heard the term townships.
Okay,
before.
so it's like a shanty town or whatever. So you'll have a lot of people living in very close proximity, and if there was a deadly virus, nobody in any of these close quarters died. There was nothing. Nothing happened. In actual fact, they weren't even wearing masks.
Yep. Amazing, right? And so when I tell people, I have been trying to, I wrote a book called The Deep State Goes Viral, that I think you and I have talked about, and I've been trying to give it to people who I wasn't able to talk to about COVID, and I try to explain to them, and I say, for instance, like masking and distancing and all of the lockdowns and stuff, and the vaccines, the lockdown until vaccine response was not a public health response. And they say to me, well, but what would have happened if we didn't do it? Right? They say, so that the answer is always not like, oh yeah, it's really good, we know it's good, but it's, if we didn't do it, it would have been worse, because that's what they've been told. And I always say, there are countries, and I'm glad you brought up South Africa. Sweden is the obvious example where they didn't do a lot of the lockdown stuff. They definitely did the vaccines, but I think your example is better. So African countries that didn't have any deaths from COVID and didn't take the vaccine are a very good counter argument to that. It's important to have a counter argument when people say, well, it would have been worse if we hadn't locked down. It would have been worse if we didn't have the vaccine. And so I think it sounds like South Africa.
You know about the Tanzanian president who opposed vaccines coming into his country and then just very mysteriously died?
I think there were 4 African leaders actually, who mysteriously died in a very short time period, and they were all leaders who were opposed to the COVID measures. Yeah. Yep. So
Debbie, we kind of went into a different direction there, but let me just quickly summarize your argument, and that is, and please jump in if I got this wrong, but basically what you're saying is that the bioweapon narrative, even if it comes from people in the alternative space, is perhaps another layer of the same operation. It keeps everybody scared, keeps us looking at the wrong thing, keeps us distracted, and we never ever get to the truth, and accountability never actually happens.
Yes. That's a good summary. And I would add, just on top of that, what we haven't mentioned is that I don't think that they can do what they say they do. So when they say weaponized ticks, when they say gain of function, when they say we can make viruses by, somebody in their garage can take this part of a virus and that part of a virus and glue them together and then release them and kill everybody, I actually don't think that's possible. So I also don't think you have to worry about it, even if you think that there are these biolabs and that they are working on this stuff. I would say that's not what you need to worry about. It's not possible.
I'm so glad I came across your work 4 years ago, and we're still chatting now. But obviously, I know how to find you. But for those who don't know, how can they follow your work? DebbieLerman.substack.com.
That's the only place where I am right now. And previously I was also at the Brownstone Institute, so there's a lot of articles that I've written at the Brownstone Institute, and my book is available on Amazon and every other place, and it's called The Deep State Goes Viral. And it was published a year ago. No, it was published in 2025.
Debbie Lerman, thank you for joining me in the trenches.
Thank you very much. I really love talking to you. Thank you.